Cheap remarks by some foreign officials supporting Iran's opposition movement are typical of their disgraceful record in their contradictory and inconsistent interaction with Iran.
That was Iran's foreign minister condemning comments from President Obama and other foreign leaders supporting anti-government protesters. And we're back now with the panel. There were two big developments today. First of all, Iranian President Ahmadinejad dismissed the opposition rallies, the anti-government rallies in the streets, as foreign-backed, quote, nauseating masquerades. And an intelligence report out of Vienna says Iran is trying to smuggle 1,300 tons of uranium ore into the country because it's running out of the material to make enriched uranium. Fred, what do you make of both?
Well, look, things get worse and worse. I think it's now for Obama to tell the Iranians, look, their time is up. He's been nice to them. He had, you know, he offered his open hand and so on and wanted to negotiate. They don't want to negotiate. They want to, their regime now in Iran is at the tipping point. It's going to go one way or another. This is not just about some election that was stolen. This is about the future of Iran. They're desperate to get nuclear weapons, for one thing, thinking that would strengthen the regime, among other things. And it's not surprising because we've heard this from anti-autocratic protesters around the world earlier. They want to know where President Obama is. Obama, which side are you on? And I don't know which side he's on. He's certainly not doing anything to help the protesters. They want him to be loudly on their side. I don't think they expect him to come and send troops or to do anything tangible, but they want him to speak out on their side. You know, for the Iranians like Ahmadinejad to condemn people and say foreigners are involved, and the foreign minister said he was going to slap the British and so on. The Iranians are involved, interfering in countries all over the Middle East, either through proxies or on their own, in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Israel, in many, many countries.
A.B., there are growing calls for this, and there's growing talk about that there's sort of a tipping point here as to whether or not this regime is going to fall or is it going to maintain its power. First of all, I question, having been in Iran, whether in fact the regime is in as much jeopardy of falling. It's pretty entrenched there, but does the president have anything to lose were he simply to say at this point, with the failure of the last year of diplomatic engagement, to say the regime is illegitimate, I'm on the side of the protesters, and the era of engagement is over?
I think when there was negotiations on the table, pending talks about a real transfer of uranium, he was treating Ahmadinejad as a legitimate leader. Those days are over. His own self-imposed deadline has arrived. This trial period has ended. President Obama doesn't have to admit defeat, but he has to make very clear to the Iranians, the opposition movement, the regime, and to us what the consequences are for Iran's failure to engage. And he has to do it soon. We're all waiting for this Thursday deadline. Time is running out with the developments about uranium from Kazakhstan, with the developments in the streets in Iran. He really has to tell us right now what Iran is going to face for flaunting this engagement policy. It failed.
Charles, I was watching you last night at home, and you were talking, I think you used the phrase, an inflection point in the history of Iran. Do you really believe that? I mean, clearly, your heart goes out when you see these demonstrators in the street and you see the way they're put down. Do you really think that that they pose an existential threat to the Islamic regime?
They do. I'm with you in believing that it's more likely that the regime will prevail, but I think it's not at all impossible that the regime will fall. And it happens in a moment. It happens always unexpectedly when the troops out there in the streets refuse to orders and don't shoot. And when that happens, the regime is dead. And remember how entrenched we had assumed the Shah was. And that happened to him. The troops in the streets wouldn't shoot.
Or Marcos, or a lot of people.
Exactly. And that's why it's a possible historical inflection. And we ought to be pushing as hard as we can to increase the odds of it actually happening. And the way to do it, look, the administration had said, we don't want to say anything inflammatory. Remember in June, Obama had defended himself in saying if we support the demonstrators, they will pin this all on us and associate the demonstrators with the West. Well, of course, we were silent in June, and the Iranian authorities implicated us in those uprisings as well. So it's going to happen anyway. In other words, why not actively support if we're going to be blamed one way or the other? And it's not just the rhetorical support. We ought to be working with the Muslim allies in bringing this to the Islamic Conference and also in the United Nations.
I hate to cut you off, but I suspect we'll be talking about this some more. That's it for the panel. But stay tuned for an anti-American rant from Hugo Chavez that may leave you feeling hungry.
Our bathroom never looked this